Welcome to Dialogues of Discovery, a platform where we bring you conversations with visionary thinkers and trailblazers who are shaping the future. If you're curious, passionate, or just figuring it all out, you are in the right place.
Each episode brings you insights, experiences, and advice from the lives and minds of remarkable people, scientists, innovators, and creators, so you can get inspired, explore, and start carving your own path forward. Listen on to uncover more.
Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Vivek Kaushik, sir, a cybersecurity leader based in Singapore, known for his expertise in identity security and his passion for building teams that truly put customers first. Over the course of his career, he has helped some of the largest organizations across Asia Pacific navigate the growing complexities of enterprise security, and he is widely respected for bringing both strategic clarity and genuine human warmth to everything he does.
Vivek sir has held senior leadership roles at CyberArk, where he served as Senior Director of Security Services for the APJ region. And now he continues to work within Palo Alto networks, following their landmark acquisition of CyberArk. Educated at the National University of Singapore, he has built his career at the intersection of technology, customer success, and people-first leadership. Beyond his professional work, he describes himself as a humanist and a force multiplier, values that clearly shape the kind of leader he has become. We are truly excited to have him here today and cannot wait to dive into this journey.
I'll just get right into it because we're really excited. We have a lot of questions about cybersecurity, about all of that in the context of what's happening in the world today, because we've been reading up for our newsletter for the next edition. Our main research blog is also going to be about cybersecurity and quantum technology. Yeah, we're really excited for this conversation. So I'll start with something a little broader, like a big picture. Can you tell us about your journey into cybersecurity, how your career eventually led you to leadership roles in the kind of organizations that you have worked in, like CyberArk and Palo Alto Networks? A little bit about what got you motivated.
Okay. It's not at all exciting. So I'm originally from India, but I came to Singapore for studying along with a few other students. So think of you going to university, but not just another city, it's like another country, right? So you have no touch with your home folks. And it was during that 4 years of my bachelor's that I got really interested in computers. So first of all, there was no home. So there's a lot of freedom, right? And then there's not a lot of time as well. You're not attending cousins' wedding or meeting family members. It's either school or your own free time. And for me, there's always a bit of what is called a rebel phase when you want to try do something in your teen time, which is everybody says you shouldn't do it, but you want to try. And it's better if it's a little bit dangerous, right? In our university, they started giving us landlines in each room. So once your computer is hooked up, there is no switching off the internet. So I got my computer in my third year, and that's it. I spent a lot of time on the internet reading up and playing around with tools. And then I got in a bit of hacking, amateur hacking. And it is really, really interesting. Think of it as the reverse of being a detective in real life. Like, why we like detective dramas is because you are always trying to find out who did it and how did they do it, right? So when you're trying to hack, it's also the same thing. You're trying to find loopholes to get in. So you're like, oh, the system has a firewall. So what kind of firewall is it? What is the source code? Can we kind of find it? And we'll find some loopholes, do some research. What if I try this, try that? So I tried all of those things. But luckily, my moral compass was correct. I wasn't like excited by breaking. But it became more interesting to me to see how do you prevent people from breaking it. So that was the starting point. And then three of us friends, once we graduated, we were looking for our jobs. This is 2001. IT had just kind of came out of the financial crisis. So the job that we all got was in a very small company, but it was three friends joining cybersecurity, which was a bit, like in Hindi, you call it like different from everybody else. So a bit of a rebel phase, friends getting together and getting into something that was different and exciting is how I got into cybersecurity. Very, very geeky start, lots of development, technical, everything for 7 years. Then I got into another company called RSA, and that's where I got into an international organization. Then you really become a professional. You know how to communicate. You know what is organization hierarchy, how do you get support, etc., etc. And that's where I got a couple of mentors who really helped me to see that I may have leadership potential and gave me chances and gave me opportunities to exploit it. And that's kind of how I recognize my leadership journey. And then end up becoming in leadership in cybersecurity. So a bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully this kind of covers.
Yeah, thank you so much. Your journey has gone from trying to be rebellious to actually becoming a leader in that space. So it's been a really long journey for you. Now that you're working in Palo Alto networks, what is a typical day or week? What does it look like for you? What kind of work does a cybersecurity expert or a leader really do?
So depending on what kind of domain you are in, cybersecurity is a very wide domain. I'll try to simplify it for you to understand in terms of like 3 or 4 basic pillars. So if you think of your home as a company's environment, everything is happening inside it, or company's environment. So there's one domain is around fortress. So how do you keep the walls and the barriers so unwanted people can't get in? So that's where you have firewall and network security and all of these things come in, right? And then there's some cloud version of it which we call it SASE, where you take the security along with the laptop so that people can work from home and still be part of that fortress. Okay, so that's one domain. The second domain is called observability, which is you want to have CCTV cameras and fingerprint technologies inside, so you can always observe and distinguish between a bad guy and a good guy, right? So same logic. And again, there's the equivalent of that you take your laptop out of the offices. So that's the second domain. The third domain is called access card. So everybody who gets in must have the access card. You must have the access card to get into the building. You must have another access card to get into the secure room. You must have a third access card to get into the cashier's box, right? So in a corporate environment, the same thing applies. We call it privileged access control or identity and access management. And then typically the fourth domain is what is called data. So at the end of the day, all this is crown jewel. So where is your manufacturing? What are you creating and where are you protecting that information? So these are the 3 or 4 typical domains. And I was lucky enough that I have more or less delved into each of these domains. Depending on which domain you are, your day may differ. So coming back to how you asked. So if let's say you are a fortress domain, that's a lot of, think of people who are monitoring petrol guards, right? Going outside and monitoring the wall. So that's the kind of job you have. You would be going out and checking your firewalls. If it's broken, some crack is there, you'll go fix it, etc., etc. If you are a CCTV guy, you'll be the person sitting and monitoring the CCTV and then going and investigating if you find some anomaly and coordinating with people who can go down and check out what's going on, etc., etc. If you're the access card guy, your job is to issue cards, take cards from people who are leaving the company, make sure the card is not counterfeit. If counterfeit cards come in, then you go and change the card. Like those kind of jobs would come in, right? So it varies a lot. Now, as a leader today, my main focus area is to make sure that my team is able to not only perform what they're supposed to do, but stretching themselves for the kind of things that they don't think they can do, but I think they can do. And also being ready for, specifically in this, as you mentioned, Aashna, the environment is changing a lot. So then the focus is on getting them ready for this future. So in the last couple of months, I've been really stressing my team to adopt AI natively, as in not just do the job based on your expertise, but use these AI tools for much better scaling and pattern matching so that you can do your job a lot more effectively and a lot more productively. So that has been a big area of focus. And then there's very interesting new technologies that are coming in. So I'm trying to consume them and trying to make sense for it for my team to get excited about. I do believe in the next 10, 15 years, what we are doing has nothing to do with the last 15, 20 years. So that is kind of very exciting for me. It's kind of think of finishing college and going to what do you call master's or PhD, like an overseas university, right? That kind of feeling. So whatever we have done was just graduation, so to say. So does that give you a good picture, Nikhil?
Yeah, I think that gives us it's very interesting the way that you talk about how different kinds of domains involve very different activities. But the fact that the moment that you're the leader in that, you have to start thinking into the future, you're thinking on the behalf of other people. You have to keep up with things, so to speak, right? Which I think is interesting because that would be true for every field. The moment that you go from being like that level of working versus a leader, that kind of shift in the way that you go about your day, I think that that's particularly interesting.
One way I can explain that is that at some stage, if you are a driver of a car versus a driver of a train versus a pilot of an aircraft or the driver of a ship, once you reach a certain level of automation and experience, the basic job will remain the same, which is the day-to-day would be done by either machines or your junior people. Your job is to make sure that you can see if tsunamis are coming, you can forecast, you can tell whether the ship needs to move left or right, whether the plane is going to have to go 44 feet or 33,000 feet, and basically at some stage when you're old enough to start looking at legacy, like who is going to take over that kind of skill from you. So get your folks to kind of build up that knowledge base and that skill. Yeah. So I would say that you are right, Ashna. That's true across, doesn't matter which domain you're doing. You're trying to get the next gen of people to pick it up. The only thing I would say in cybersecurity is a little bit unique is that you're focusing on making sure that people still keep up to the first principles, because technology and tooling can change. And there's a word called tool seduction, which basically means that you can get too much into the technology and the fact that it can do amazing things and forget that its job is, it's just a tool. It's like if you had a drill and you realize that the drill is amazing and you start drilling holes everywhere, that's called tool seduction. You're actually destroying, you're not creating anything. And the job of the drill is to drill a hole where you need a hole and nowhere else.
Okay, so on that note, can you tell us about a challenging situation that you faced at work? Like, give us one situation, how you approached it, what the challenge was.
The usual challenge that I would say we face is that security is always like considered by most businesses as something that prevents them from doing what they want to do, right? Because I mean, think of it this way. You guys are trying to get into a building. The security guy says, okay, you need to enter. You give a pass. Make sure you stand in the line, open your bag, trying to get into the plane, open your bag, take out everything. And everybody's like, oh, this is so frustrating. The line is long and I'm not the bad guy and things like that. So whenever a real business is trying to make money, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get some investment to create value either by a product or a service and provide it to their customers. So that involves a lot of data, access to data, people communicating with that information and finding unique ways to create or modify that information, right? So the best way would be that everybody can access whatever information they want at any time, right? That's one extreme. And what do security want? Security want what is called now zero standing privileges, zero touch, which is only on need. What you need is what you get access for the shortest amount of time, and then I take it away from you. Right? These are security best principles. So innovation and security best principles in some ways can be opposite of each other, right? And what my job today is a lot of times is to make sure that that is not the case. Yeah. So recently, one of our customers was a bank, and we were installing our solution there. And we are coming as experts in telling them a way for their guard with CCTV to now become an AI agent who can be a lot faster in responding to videos, if that analogy makes sense, right? And the bank was not yet ready to adopt that level of automation. And they have been doing work with you stand in a queue, there's an outer office, a guy will come stand and take your numbers, the details by hand, and then after that will go in. So they're like in that older era. And we are trying to convince them to move fast so that the business won't be taking security as a blocker. And so you have to sit down with them, empathize with where they are coming from, what their needs, why they want to still do work the old way, and then show them that doing this way would be faster. People won't lose jobs. They will get reskilled for the new technologies and they will get better protected. And that will also help them to make sure that their investors or their business stakeholders will take these things positively. So a lot of folks think that cybersecurity guys are like James Bond, trying to go and figure out. It's not really every day. It's usually just in the movies. Most of the time, the job is very boring. No hero stuff. Does that answer?
Yeah, I think actually understanding about what AI is and how that automation really works actually affects companies because they have been working in a system that's been working for them for so long. And suddenly when, we bring automation into it, it becomes challenging for them to adopt it. So empathizing with them is really important. And right now, we are also entering what many people are calling the AI era of cybersecurity. So how do
Yes.
you think such technologies such as AI will challenge your work? How will it affect the way you are working?
Very, very transformative. The closest I can think of is how telegraph changed the way we communicate. If you can ever think of a world, there was no internet, there was no signals, and there was not even radios. And you had to send messages via pigeons or riders. That was the only way that you could send letters. And then there was a sea change and the way that communication could happen when you had telegraph wires and radios, and therefore 20 kilometers message could go in seconds, right? Exactly the same thing is happening, especially with cybersecurity and AI. Previously, finding vulnerability, crafting an exploit, deploying an exploit. There's like 6 or 7 stages. I'm just giving you a high level reference. Like deploying the exploit and then having a breach, communicate that back to your command and control, and then data exfiltration. All of these cycles would take weeks and months and a team, right? And because of the ability of LLMs, I would still call them LLMs, not just AI. the LLMs are extremely good at pattern detection across a very wide area of data sets because of the amount of tokens that they can harness that human beings just don't have the head for it, right? So we're talking 200 billion to 2 billion kind of tokens scale for Anthropic and those kind of models. So they are able to detect these kind of patterns a lot faster. So now exploit detection and exploit validation and exfiltration, all of these stages are being happening in seconds. So it's like when you are creating a guard structure, you were thinking of Shah Rukh Khan trying to breach it, but instead of that, you got Flash trying to breach it, right? Flash and Superman are flying so fast that you can't even know when they come in. So your traditional of CCTV and all are not going to work. You really have to have the Superman equivalent of defense. And one of the things that we are trying to do now in our industry is to just take these kind of models and see how we can use them as a defender, not just as a attacker. And like everything else, attacking is very fast and easy. Defending is where you need to have guardrails and make it difficult. So now the potential for AI is also very high. There are many, many things in security that was before AI was very difficult. So the thing is, when you make a tool, creating a tool in a industrial scale takes time. You have to design it, you have to test it, you have to validate it, then you have to deploy it, and you have to deploy it in people's systems. And people are different kinds of somebody's running Windows, Mac, Linux, etc. So all of this takes a long time, but exploiting is very fast. So we were always on the backseat of trying to chase bad guys. Now we don't have to do it because the cost of manufacturing just became zero, right? You can give a sense of what you want to an LLM, and coding is super fast, creating a product is super fast, testing is super fast. In fact, there are companies which now already in software security, there are companies that don't use humans for testing. They use synthetic personas of testers. So AIs are testing the software at a scale 24/7 that humans couldn't do, right? So that's already happening. So this is the potential. We can, if we harness correctly, be in a situation where we may be able to detect and prevent the bad guys from accessing data a lot faster than we have been able to do. So that's the potential, and that's the transformative scale.
So if that's what it's going to look like as AI becomes more and more, as you said, LLMs become more and more integrated into the field, and taking that a step further, what will it look like when quantum technology, like quantum cryptography, quantum computing, when that becomes something that's actually major than mainstream? How is that going to change cybersecurity?
So in security, there's the concept is CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These are the three basic principles of security. So the only way you make sure that the right people have access to the data that they needed is with encryption. Think about it. We have SSL to encrypt the traffic that should be between the two places. We use encryption and disks so that only I can log in and see my data. So enforcement of access and privacy is usually by encryption. And encryption has been using keys and algorithms, right? And so the underlying assumption was how difficult it is for somebody to brute force and break the key, right? And so RSA, the original public-private key that came up was the difficulty of factoring large prime numbers. And of course, when this algorithm was made, nobody thought that there'll be 32 qubits coming in, which will completely change the parallelization of access. So the underlying assumption of security being confidentiality and that being encryption and that relying on algorithms, which is difficult to compute. So with that house of card image, think of quantum cryptography as the basis. So we are now trying to get customers to be ready for post-quantum world where we are already assuming that at some point, quantum computing will be the how people will do day to day. And so all the current encryption algorithms will be broken. So my company and a few other companies are already doing what is called post-quantum analysis for organization. We go to companies and say, let's do an analysis of what are encryption algorithms you are using and how many of these will survive. So let's get ready for post-quantum world. So, and I think everybody has to get there. A lot of attackers now and even nation states are doing what is called harvest now, decrypt later. So they are already storing a lot of encryption data today because they're expecting in 5-10 years time they would be able to access quantum computing and decrypt this information. And if you're using AES and RSA right now, not very helpful. These things get broken very fast. So this is going to be like the sea change again in terms of how we use. The only thing to keep in mind is the algorithms might change, but the principles will remain the same. So there are algorithms right now which can protect against kind of quantum quantum computers, and then that's what is going to become the norm. So I think that's going to be the ability for us to change fast enough to be able to adopt this is going to determine, are we living in a era where, confidentiality is maintained or it's not.
That's really amazing to think about how just two of the most important technologies coming into the picture just changes the whole scene, the whole picture totally. So, in this kind of changing world, you describe yourself as a force multiplier and a humanist. So, what does this style of leadership look like in a highly technical industry like cybersecurity? Because it's a changing landscape. So, how do you lead teams now?
Okay, very interesting. So I came up with this moniker of force multiplier a few years ago because I realized that as the world's changing, I am also becoming further and further from the cutting edge innovation. I'm not coding every day and, I'm not going to customer sites and installing firewall and all that stuff anymore. So I'm going to have to be dynamic enough to realize what's the latest technology. So as you grow older and wiser, you realize that there are smarter people around you, which is good, right? You should always have smarter people around you. And then how can you help use your life experiences to make these smarter people become a 1 plus 1 equal to 11, like help them to see the potential of working together in a more unique way. And so that's what when I say is force multiplier. And so I was lucky enough to get the right people to guide me. I was lucky enough to get a very grounded education, very humble education from and right moral values from my family, I would say. And I've of course worked hard for it. But therefore, I've built all of these things in a way that I am not focused on my outcomes. I'm more focused on what my team is able to do. So when your deep principle is that your team has to be able to get to the next stage, and your thought process is 1 plus 1 become 11, then your focus is on making sure that these folks are able to do things beyond what they think is their potential. So today, when that translates to things like AI and LLM, my main focus is to help our team members and the wider community see AI as a companion, not as something to be feared or not as something to even be exploited, right? And so if AI is a companion, it's kind of think of it as a worker. And so like in cybersecurity today, there are a lot of agents doing things, and these agents can help you to scale a lot faster. So if you were doing 20 things a day, with agents, you could be doing 100 things because instead of doing, you actually do a lot of validation. And it's actually very, very critical that folks understand LLMs are non-deterministic by definition. It's word association, it's probability. So 3 different times, same input will never give you the same output. And there will be a built-in hallucination because of the LLM. So you need to have the expertise to be able to guide the LLM towards the right conclusion and to be able to validate when it is hallucinating. So, and that's what we want our team to be able to do. So that's part of that humanist and force multiplier. So force multiplier is getting people to work together in ways that they couldn't see. And humanist to say is that human has a potential no matter what situation. Even if everything can be done by LLM, there will always be a potential for us to be able to work with them, together with them, and elevating them. Them being AI. Yeah.
I think that's a very profound way of approaching leadership, and I'm very glad for whoever your team members must be for receiving that sort of mentorship.
I will get them to talk to you because it may not be that they may not think that I'm just yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sure they do. So, kind of picking up on what Nikhil said a little earlier, right? He was talking about how the field is changing and everything that you have to do is in adaptation to that. So I was wondering, I know this is a very odd question considering the fact that things are changing in such a paradigm way, but how do you see the quantum, or rather the cryptography and the cybersecurity landscape in, let's say, the next 10 years? And what do you think is the gap that we currently have in reaching that? Like, what is the next level of jump that it's going to take to actually reach that?
You are right. It's a little tough question now. It would have been an easier question 3-4 years ago. It is going to be I am not a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates or someone like that to have that kind of vision ability. So I'm going to take that with a pinch of salt that this is my personal point of view based on whatever I have understood. But there are going to be smarter folks who are much more, profound, who probably have a better idea. What I do see is that one of the challenges that cybersecurity industry faces is the lack of collaboration and cooperation, and I guess a bit of governance globally. I'm just give you a 2-minute example of it. The main reason why attackers are able to do what they do today is because there is no consequence today as long as you're hiding with international IPs and VPNs across the world. It's extremely easy to breach. In fact, if I wanted, I could sit here, take 4 VPN connections, route them through four countries which are at conflict with each other, and then go and attack like a bank or something and exploit it. And these guys will be stuck in bureaucratic loop trying to figure out whose IP address they need to breach in for 5, 10 years. And that's it. And so this is the lack of collaboration. And that has been the biggest stumbling block for us to be able to protect against the bad guys. Guys who want to access information they're not entitled to or monetize it. I do see that in the next 10 years, these gaps will become very apparent. So far, the investigation speed was slow enough that the governance or lack of governance and collaboration wasn't always front and center. But when your LLM based tools and quantum cryptography based support are going to tell within 5 days, 5 minutes that there are 20 attacks all coming from Russia or 15 attacks all coming from US, then the people themselves will demand that the governments take action. Because today people find all this field as like a very James Bondy style. Nobody understands cybersecurity on day-to-day basis. They don't really care. But it becomes very easy if you have everybody has an LLM to understand and they write in Claude, give me 5 minutes summary of what is DES or what is AES. Suddenly there's a bit of democratization of the information and on the attack chain. And that forces people to then demand from their political leaders the kind of action that hasn't really happened. So I think that is something that is my hope that would happen in the next 10 years, that the lack of collaboration and governance will become very apparent and then governments will have to take action to say that, okay, we are going to have to set up some sort of a UN style cyber body or some sort of a coalition of the willing against cybersecurity so that bad guys are not able to break it. For us as professionals, I think we have to embrace the fact that in future and especially our next generation, that your role will become less of doing, more of governing. The doers will be a lot of the agents, a lot of the AI based updates. And in fact, AI LLMs will probably reach a stage where they can create agents and they can create next level of models as well. We're not that far off, actually. So building things will not be the focus. But building without governance can build crazy things and disproportionate things or things which have no meaning. So our focus would be to guide AI towards building things that are meaningful, that are good for humanity, good for the world, and not build things which are destructive. So the ability for us to communicate with each other, to have the right moral compass and use it in an effective way, and also to treat each other with respect as also the agents with respect. This is very unique. Right? So these are going to be the key principles that I think will be my hope for the future. I don't want to tell you guys the depressing. So there's the optimistic part, there's a depressing part. The depressing part we'll keep for another day.
Yeah, I think, even for students, cybersecurity seems like a very overwhelming field. So even for early career professionals, this field seems kind of like changing so much that people don't have as much interest towards it. So what advice would it be that you give to young people who want to build a career in this field, even though the scene is changing so vastly in such a wide and deep manner?
Look, let me twist the question a little bit. Do you think that anybody wants to become a detective to investigate crimes?
Yeah, I think a lot of us also read books that, are about that, and we like that detective work.
That's true. I mean, you like the stories, but if you ever read the life of a detective, generally, it is 95% boring and a lot of waiting and admin work and which we call it grunt work. Like you really have to look for clues by going down to first principle investigation, reconnaissance, looking at documents, looking at convincing people to share information, all that stuff. The action part of chasing the guy on the street and all is a very small part of it. Cybersecurity is something very similar. 95% of the time, it is not as exciting. I would say that the first thing is you must have a very deep innate desire of right people having access to right data and wrong people not to have access to that data. That is basically the first principle. This is the same thing as like in a detective, you want to make sure that you understand that human life is sacred. Nobody should kill anybody. So that's why you will prevent murder. If ever somebody thought that in certain conditions it's justified to kill, you wouldn't be a police inspector. So my advice is that if you are thinking of cybersecurity as a career, the field itself is going to change a lot. But the underlying principle would be that access and data belongs to the right people, to the right places, and there is a right way of getting it and there is a wrong way of getting it. And our focus is to prevent the wrong way of doing things and to enable the right way of doing things, just like a detective. As long as that is an exciting, to me, that was revalidation every time. I felt like I was what I was doing, but what I was doing for, I mean, when you to go into a career after 5, 10 years, every few years, you'll be feeling like, why am I doing this? Right. And there's a pretty healthy way of looking at the world. But going back to that first principles, let me realize this is why I do it, because I believe this is the way the world should be. And I want to contribute by supporting that word to be built. And I don't like chaos and anarchy. And I don't like the fact that anybody can access whatever they want, even if they have rights for it or not. Like there's a lack of privacy is a big, big, big piece of this. Everybody wants to have their information private. Why? Because I have right and duties to my family and to my near and dear ones. I don't want to share everything I have with the wide world. So that's why your privacy, and that's where cybersecurity comes in. So I do believe in the right of privacy, and that's where it comes from. So for cybersecurity professionals, that's where the first principles come. After that, you have to have a DNA of being highly adaptable. And one of the ways that I kind of personify this is that everybody has the same amount of time, right? And the amount of time you spend thinking about why did this happen, that is the less amount of time you have to make it. How can I make it work in my favor? So the more you are thinking along the lines of, I can't change what happened. I can only change how I react or respond to it. If you have that kind of DNA or a mindset, then you'll be very successful in cybersecurity, because things change a lot. And every attack that happened was never foreseen, right? Things that can go wrong. Have you guys heard of Murphy's Law? What can go wrong will go wrong and always go in the wrong time. So the same thing happens in cybersecurity. The thing that you always trust is going to be the bedrock, always gets broken, and always gets broken when the worst possible time. I'll tell you guys an interesting story. In most companies in the world, the period of 20th December to 31st of December is considered year-end closing, financial books closing. And so no company tries to schedule any kind of IT maintenance during that time. This has been the norm for the last 15, 20 years. And so this is called a freeze period. Everything is frozen. Even updates are frozen, because we don't want to compromise the ability of people to close the financial books. We are talking billions and billions of dollars worth of commerce and transaction, right? About 5 years ago, there was a vulnerability that came out, and the notification and the breach code for it came out just before Christmas, and it was called Log4j. And Log4j was an underlying code for logging information, which has been utilized by almost every application in the world. Okay, it's a module that was created on open source many years ago. It was so useful in logging that everybody has been using it to create. And think of like libraries now. When you do coding these days, you use libraries. So there was one library called Log4j, like OpenSSL, that everybody was using everywhere. So the last 15 years, everywhere it was there. And then there was a vulnerability. And when was it? Just before Christmas. So everybody was thinking this is freeze period, but no, this is not freeze period. Now within 2 days, you have to figure out, is your application impacted? If it is, how can we patch it and how can we fix it before bad guys take over? So this is kind of an example of what you expect the least in cybersecurity that can happen, and you have to try and fix it. So you have to have a mindset of being ready for these kind of challenges. Now, it's not impossible. And Nikhil, you were right. It can feel overwhelming. But I would argue that every field can be overwhelming if you look at the real deep level of doing it. So everybody in cybersecurity comes in stages. First you come in with education and basics, then you come in and try, then you have to implement solutions, then you have to do some investigation as an analyst to see how other guys are making judgments. So you build up towards it. This is not like the end of it. My last comment would be, and this is more tied to recent technologies like LLMs, is that one of the worries that we have is, when I say we as in cybersecurity industry has, is that previously people were responsible to create code. And so like every skill, there was a skill chart. The junior guys will not know, so they will follow the senior guys. The senior guys are doing build, the super senior guys are validating it. And that's like a waterfall flow that goes over a year, right? Now the problem is that people are not coding. There's something called vibe coding. They're just giving instructions for someone else to build. And because they don't always have the expertise, they don't even know whether the code that is coming out is the right thing or not. As long as it looks and does the thing, they're like, oh, okay, it's fine. But behind the scene, it may actually be having some vulnerabilities. We wouldn't see its impact now. We may see its impact 10, 15 years from now. And the reason is today, the senior folks who have expertise are checking the LLM outcomes and telling that where it's hallucinating and what is not hallucinating. But these guys build their skill in many years of being juniors, right? Over many years. But today's junior guys are using Claude and everything to fix. So they don't have to sit in the night at 12 o'clock and boss told them to fix this bug overnight and they had to find 10 ways of trying it manually and fixing it and then remembering the lessons that yes, I must make sure my pointers do not have a memory leak, as an example, right? So we need to make sure that there's an ability for people to be able to skill up. So that is my advice, that while you may learn to use LLMs for scaling, the first principle of knowing what it does and how it does it, please don't forget, because at any time that is how you're going to be able to check and govern and be able to even work when systems fail. Some things can fail and then you will have to take up. So you really need to have those kind of skills. Sorry, a very long-winded answer, but you can see I'm a bit passionate about this.
I think it makes a lot of sense. So just to summarize, you were talking about how someone who wants to get into that field, they need to be adaptable to the fact that things are going to be changing, and it seems repetitive, and then suddenly something kind of spikes and something happens and you have to adapt to that. Secondly, you were talking about how it's a field of technical expertise, so you need that first principles knowledge. You can't skip the first few steps and just try going up, because then you don't have that grounding. And I think the first thing you spoke about was about how there's an angle of ethics and justice involved, and that's where the purpose of the whole thing lies, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I love the way, Aashna, that you summarized. Both of you are very smart. You know, when I was your age, I would never have been able to talk like this. So I'm super impressed.
Thank you. It's been a work in progress over the last few conversations like this. So
this is the beauty of practice makes perfect. 10,000 times somebody has to do something to make. And sometimes I feel like, you know, not you guys, but some of the next generation folks I see, they give up too fast. And I always wonder that why give up so fast? You know, try a few more times, you might be able to get it. So good.
So considering all of this, the next generation needs to be ready for this kind of world, right?
Of course.
And I'd say it's up to us to figure out how to get ready for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
the next generation could either be the Gabbar Singh or, hey, what was that guy's name? Jay and Viru. It's up to us. The tools, the guns and the bombs and the knives have now just become AI. And quantum cryptography means that instead of throwing it, rockets can throw it. But ultimately, you still have to decide, do you want to be a Gabbar Singh to exploit it for your own gain, or you want to protect humanity with the right ethics? And that's like Viru and Jay, right? So the choice is yours, folks.
okay, thank you so much for the conversation. It was amazing for all the different kinds of landscapes and areas that we walked in the last probably 40-45 minutes. I think those are basically all the questions we had. We've covered a lot more than we expected to as well. So thank you so much for your time.
And so, by the way, you guys did an extremely good job of preparing it. So my compliments. You were very attentive and engaged, which is very good. These are not platonic questions. You guys thought about it deeply and also took my answers and thought about it deeply. And somebody like me, you let me go wander off, which I'm thankful for. My final word here would just be that I always believe in the positivity of humanity. So whatever you guys are thinking, at the end of the day, you will come out positive from it. Don't lose hope about the future. Pardon the excesses of our generation, but learn from the excesses of our generation so that you guys don't make the same mistakes and therefore are able to do things better than what we have been doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on this journey of ideas, inspiration, and innovation.
We hope that this conversation sparked curiosity and reminded you that behind every great discovery is a human story of passion, purpose, and persistence.
Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep learning, because the future is being built by the questions you asked today.
This is Dialogues of Discovery signing off.